You've described three principles under which you operate: mastery, innovation, and service. And I want you to
Ah,
talk about
yes.
each of those things, please. And then talk about what happens if one of them's missing.
Yeah, okay. Well, so mastery is quite simply what you know. So, like I like to say mastery is what you can do blindfolded at Carnegie Hall in front of 5,000 people, like that's your mastery. It's your toolbox of that, right? There's no it's not I don't it's not like I might be able to do this, I can do this sometimes. Mastery is quite simply what you know. Innovation is the risks you're willing to take, and those risks are always, like, to me, mastery is the big bowl underneath all of it, right? Innovation are these sort of ledges that you can go out on, and they're very much dependent on this. They're very situationally dependent, your innovation. So if I'm on a particular type of session with a particular type of artist, producer, whatever, then my intuition needs to be employed to know what type of innovation. Because here's the thing, is like, as a musician, I want to help. So I want to, I'm not hired to just be safe, right? I'm not hired to just play something that anybody could play. I'm hired to, like, be Matt Rawlings, whatever that means. And part of that is the way that I can take a chance, the way that I can do something unexpected, or something, you know, sometimes flashy, sometimes not, but to innovate. And a straight ahead country session, I'm not going to go playing altered dominant scales, because it's not appropriate. It might be innovative, but it wouldn't be appropriate. So all that innovation is always informed by the situation, and then
That
and
leads
then
to service,
service.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and another thing I'll say about innovation is that, we talk about brain and body. The brain is constantly setting limits for us, to keep us safe. The brain is constantly saying, this is as far as you can go. And, at its core, our animal, brain, is saying, if you go, if you go past this, you're going to die. I mean, and in some level, that's the message, right?
Right, right.
And so two things happen when you take chances. One of two things happens when you take chances. And the first thing that could happen is you do something you didn't think you could do, and suddenly that gets incorporated into your brain's sort of boundaries, and you grow that way. And so you're able to go to that place maybe more easily the next time. The second thing that could happen is you fall on your face and you don't die. And so so that the consequence of going for something and not quite getting there, the consequence is that you get to have pride in the fact that you went for something, and you get to learn from, why didn't this work? Was I nervous? Was I, whatever it is. But there's always real estate in between what your brain is telling you how far you can go, right? Between that sort of brain imposed boundary and what you're capable of. There's real estate there. Sometimes there's a lot of real estate. Some, depending on who you are. I think, the great jazz musicians, those two places might be in the same place, because they're constantly innovating. And there's, some of these musicians are just so fearless. And
Yeah.
but so yes, so that's the innovation piece. Service is, the way I look at it, is you're always in service of something, and to me, the more that I can be aware of that, the easier it is for me to put myself out there. So if I'm going to go play, and that service ties in with the whole percentage thing of putting your attention on something else. If I'm playing on stage with Alison Krauss, I'm certainly in service of her. I'm in the employ of her, but I'm also in service of her. Like, part of my job is to support her, and all of my job is to support her. But I'm also in service of the audience. I'm in service of a song. I'm in service of my gifts. If you choose to believe in God, you can be in service of God, certainly. So service is I think the more that I can be in service of something other than me, the happier I am, and the better musician and the better person I am.
Well,
as
let
well.
me mention, I caught your interview with Paul Leslie. It's a wonderful interview. And
Oh, thank you.
you said something very interesting which relates and it's a little paradoxical, but I think you'll be able to work it out. You said, "As I get older, the only voice I need to be accountable to is my own. Then
Hmm.
I can collaborate." Well, can you talk about the balance between serving versus being accountable to yourself first and foremost? That's a
Yeah,
balancing
to
act.
me, those aren't at odds at all. And I think at least what I hope I meant in Paul's interview was that being accountable to myself means that others' opinions, I mean, I spent a lot of time and too much energy as a young person, um, as sort of a pleaser. And so I'm more and more, um, it's just, I'm just tired of that. First of all. And so I think, trusting my voice, trusting my intuition, and trusting that I actually have something to say that's valid, because it's easy. There's a term, compare to spare. It's easy to compare myself to other musicians. And whenever I do, I always fall short. So if I'm just concerned with um, being true to myself as a person and as a musician, then I'm okay. And then that actually allows me to be in service. That allows me to, that sort of opens the door for me to then be generous with what I have. If I find that if I'm constantly comparing myself to others, then that puts me in more of a selfish place. Then I'm trying to measure up and I'm trying to do better and I'm trying to, I play how I play and I am who I am, and I try to get better, but um, sometimes this notion of I have to be better, I have to be faster, whatever it is, from my perspective, can get in the way of actually, my voice and what it is that I actually have to say.
Is that the difference between trying to please someone and serving them?
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, trying to please someone is doing something for the purpose of approval, essentially.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you know I and I can interpret anything as approval or disapproval, mostly disapproval, but I can interpret I remember I used to, early on, I worked for Larry Carlton for a handful of years, and played on some records and then did some touring with him. And I was very young and I was constantly looking for approval. And just Larry, who Larry is, if he doesn't say anything, that means you're doing great.
Yeah.
Which went for me was torture. I wanted somebody to say, "Man, that sounds great." And that just wasn't Larry. He loved what I was doing and he didn't feel like there was any need to say anything, to say, to say that to me. It's just who he is. He just kind of, he figures his perspective was, if you're up here and I ain't telling you you're doing it wrong, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
But so the whole notion of doing anything for approval, it's just trying to build a house in the sand, because it's
Mm-hmm.
going to shift constantly. And if I really go there, then I'm always going to fall short. That's just how I'm wired. So if I use the tools that I know I can use to get out of my own way and get out of my head, and then be of service, then
Yeah.
I think it may be even opposite. Being of service is what helps me get out of my own way.
Mm-hmm.
Like practicing, taking the steps and doing the practice of being in service of someone else, of something other than myself.
Yeah, yeah. It's very tricky. I'm thinking, try to paraphrase you a little bit, that if you're seeking approval, you're trying to get someone to go out of their way to tell you you're doing a great job. And if you're serving them, you're actually trying to look yourself for how you can help them before they have to tell you. So you're actually actively engaged with them
Yeah,
as opposed to
yeah.
looking for some kind of a bounce back from them.
Yeah, I think a number of things happen when I put myself in an attitude of service, which is that I just naturally relax, because I'm not shining the spotlight on me. I'm not, when I'm shining the spotlight on me, then it's all about, did they like this? Did they like that? Nobody clapped at that solo. Does that mean it was a shitty solo? Like all of those voices come in. When I'm really in an attitude of service, then those things don't matter.
Yeah.
They cease to matter, because I'm not up there for me. I'm up there to try to make this thing better, and to try to share with an audience, with whatever, to try to share what I have.
Yeah.
And then that just, it simplifies everything. It's it can be hard to get there sometimes, but it's definitely it's the way forward.
Do you have a favorite collaboration or assignment from over the years?
Wow. Well, all of Lyle Lovett's records that I've played on have been favorites. I love him, and I love his music, and he's consistently given me a huge chunk of real estate to be myself in on his recordings, which is extremely generous. And so those have been favorites of mine. It's hard to say. There've been a lot. So it's, as far as not recording, but I spent 3 years, 2 or 3 years touring with Alison Krauss before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing experience. She's a profoundly talented human. And the band she put together was Jay Bellerose and Barry Bales and Ron Block, both from Union Station. And then this guy, Sidney Cox, singing. I forgot. There's a guitar player whose name is escaping me at the moment. But it was, it was this incredible listening and generous experience. So, we would start each show with this song that was just piano and vocal. And, if you go see a live concert, most of the time, whoever it is going to come out of the gate with something like big and loud to grab the audience, right? Alison did the opposite. What did she call it? She called it like a soft hello or something. She had some great term for it, but it was this really, like, I would play this really soft chord and she would start singing this song, just the two of us for a whole verse. And I mean, within seconds, you could hear a pin drop every night, no matter the size, outdoors, indoors. And that's how the show was set up, was like, come closer. I'm going to talk soft. So you need to come closer and really listen. And they did. All the audiences, and it's Alison Krauss. I mean, she has her voice and her spirit. All of it is so compelling to me, but the band too, everybody was such a listener, and it went through all this dynamic change. It was a thrill. It was the best, maybe one of the best live experiences I've ever had. Small band too. So
yeah.
And that was the one that canceled. There was a tour with her that canceled when the pandemic started. So,
was there an assignment that you found most challenging, either for better or for worse? Maybe you absolutely hated it or something like that, or maybe it just challenged you and made you grow.
Wow. I've had a couple of film score experiences that have been challenging. I can read, but I'm not a super sight reader. So the couple of things I did one from a film from Mark Isham a bunch of years ago that was very piano based, and a couple of others, James Newton Howard, a couple of composers that I got to work with when I lived in LA. And the pressure of being, I remember specifically that the Mark Isham one, it was 2 days. The first day was just me and two guitarists, George Deering, and I forgot the second guy, two acoustic guitars. The second day was the three of us and, 60 pieces, and Conrad Pope conducting, and like a legit film score date. And, the big counters that would, and thankfully Mark, who I knew a little bit, he had sent me the music ahead of time. So I kind of knew, I knew it. But still the pressure of, a 60-piece orchestra, and, the counter and the countdown and the click, and having to play it perfectly. Because if you don't, the whole thing stops and you reset and you're the guy who did it and everybody in the room knows it. And that happened to me once. I came in too early and it was terrifying. Like those kind of situations are really, and other musicians who do that stuff all the time really thrive on that. And I kind of don't.
Yeah.